You may not remember the first time that you offended your mother or your father, that you offended your own conscience. However, I would imagine that is hardly the case if you are a Christian, a disciple of Jesus. You remember the first time when you, after committing your life to Jesus, when you found yourself committing a sin, particularly something that you had struggled with before. Some of you never got up from that. Some of you turned away. Have you ever wondered why? If you wondered why, it may be because you did not understand just what it meant to follow Jesus. It does not mean that you'll never be tempted, that you'll never stumble. In fact, it does mean that you will stumble, that you will sin. But by the grace of God, we are renewed, we are refreshed in our faith. There's an experience recorded in the Gospel according to Matthew, in which Jesus is tempted by Satan himself. And it's a passage I'd like for you to look at in Matthew chapter 4, reading the first few verses. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he then became hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command that these stones become bread." And he answered and said, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God." Satan himself has come to Jesus in the wilderness to tempt him. And by all outward appearances, Satan sees an individual with 2 arms, 2 hands, 2 eyes, 2 ears, looks just like you and I. And Satan figures, oh, I know exactly what it takes to lure, to tempt one of these. The thing is, when Satan comes to Jesus, he knows full well whom he is dealing with. And I'd like to point something out that various scholars have noted in the past. And it exposes a bit of Satan's treachery and his wickedness. Because where the passage reads, "If you are the Son of God," it can also be translated, "Since you are the Son of God." If you look at it, either way you look at it rather, there is no violence, no harm being done to the Scripture. Either way you look at it, you see Satan being exposed for what he is, a treacherous liar. When he comes to Jesus and says, "If you are the Son of God," it's like a doubt. Well, if you are the Son of God, or if you read it otherwise, "Since you are the Son of God, let's see you turn these stones to bread." That is the same kind of mockery and doubt that Satan plants into the mind, into the heart of the believer. The unfortunate thing that too many of us overlook is that when Satan comes to us and he finds us in doubt and wondering, well, am I really a Christian? I think of Satan coming at that moment with some glee, and he thinks half my work is done here, because here is a child of God. He knows full well who is a child of God, as well as he knew who Jesus was. And he comes to tempt this individual, and he sees that individual struggling in doubt already as to whether or not they are a child of God. And Satan thinks to himself, half my work is done here. This is a piece of cake. He comes to Jesus, he tempts him in no different a manner than he tempted Adam and Eve. It is what is called in 1 John chapter 2, verse 16, it's the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And in this first instance, where he is tempting Jesus, "Since you are the Son of God, if you are the Son of God, let's see you turn these stones to bread." It's the lust of the flesh. What do you need? What do you want to... What will you do to sustain your life? And mind you, when he comes to Jesus, Jesus is 40 days fasting. 40 days without food. He is in a weakened state. And when Satan comes to him, he is tempting him. He is daring him to do this. Can you do this? If you are a Christian, can you do this? Satan says. But then he goes on, after Jesus has responded to him, "Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God." Then the devil took him into the holy city, and he stood him on the pinnacle of the temple, and he said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will give his angels charge concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. Jesus said to him, on the other hand, it is written, you shall not tempt the Lord your God. Satan now moves from the lust of the flesh to the lust of the eyes. The lust of the eyes is having to do with what looks good. When Eve saw that fruit and she saw that it looked good, it was alluring to her. It was captivating, and she wanted it. Satan comes to Jesus, and he tempts him. He dares him. If you are the Son of God, since you are the Son of God, let's see you throw yourself off this pinnacle. It's a dare that Jesus responds, and he says, no. On the other hand, it is written, you shall not tempt the Lord your God. And lastly, Satan now decides, almost at a frantic, what I consider a bit of franticness on his part. He has gone to merely, in the first place, he started out by tempting Jesus to convert the stones to bread. And in the second instance, when he sees Jesus respond with Scripture, Jesus, or Satan himself, uses Scripture. But now, in this third instance, when he comes to Jesus again, he tempts him, only now he brings something to the table. And he says, reading in verse 8 and following, again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, all these things will I give you if you fall down and worship me. Then Jesus said to him, begone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Satan, as I said, is resorting now to a bit of a frantic effort, because now he brings something to the table. Now he's telling Jesus, look, just do it. Just bow down and worship me, and I'll give you all these things. How many times has it happened in your life? How many times have you discerned that Satan was working in and around every which way in your life, tempting you with the lust of the flesh, the pride of the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life? And as he came to you, maybe you yourself were wondering, well, I don't know, am I a real Christian? Am I really a disciple, a child of God? When you find yourself wondering and doubting that, as I said, you have made it easy for Satan. He comes and he thinks, half my work is done here. When Jesus was tempted, it was in order that, as the Hebrews writer says, he was tempted in all things in order that we might have a high priest, one who's been tempted in all things. But then also, he was tempted, again, as the Hebrews writer says, in order that he might be able to come to the aid of those who are tempted. That is you and me. Thank you. Walk in the Spirit.